Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. This is going to be our multi-medium platform to bring hazmat response information and training tips from hazmat members around the globe. I'm Michael Monaco. I'm going to be acting tonight as the host for the show. I am joined by, hopefully soon, Bob Kosh, who he can't introduce himself because he's trying to get on. He's a hazmat lieutenant with the Orlando Fire Department. He's also the hazmat program manager at Valencia College in Orlando, Florida, and he's also the director of training of sales for Hazmat. I am me. Phil, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm experienced with power failure, so I am under candlelight, although I do have a battery Wi-Fi. So if I drop off, maybe you'll get a distinguished guest like last time. Phil Ambrose. I'm a hazmat paramedic fire captain in Southern California. I'm also the inventor and founder of HazSim, and I run Hazmat Nation.
Very nice, very nice. Bob Salvesen is with us tonight from New York. We want to say a few words about yourself, Bob?
I got my mullet on.
I see that.
I'm a hazmat specialist from New York City Fire Department, FDNY, Hazmat One. Me and Mike work together, and we are also the co-hosts for the Hazmat Guys podcast that you can find weekly on iTunes and whatnot.
And I can pretty much ditto what Bob said. That's all my information is pretty much the same as Salvesen's.
Come on,
For tonight, like most nights, when we have the two Bobs on, we'll be referring to Bob Salvesen as Salvo and Bob Kosh as Kosh, because no one can actually pronounce his last name.
Yes.
So, how's everyone doing tonight?
So far, so good. I want Kosh to get on. I see he's trying to get on, but what the heck?
Yeah. I just spoke with him, too.
It looks like you're not approving him.
No, he's on. He's got 14 claps right now. He's there. He's just completely blocked.
He looks like he's trying to get in. Give me host rights. Come on, click on me. There you go. Come on. No, I don't have host rights yet. Yeah, give me host rights.
I'm trying.
All right. Well, no, you're just clapping for me. You got to click on my name, I think.
I am clicking on your name. It's not.
In the meantime, I want to recognize, let's see.
Oh, okay. There you go.
See lots of the regulars. Welcome, Jeremy.
Ian as host.
Is he in?
Welcome, Johnny Cakes.
Carandona. I always say that wrong. Bob, try to
Jason, we should talk. Try to talk this week for your trip out to California.
Well, you know, Bob Kosh, he called us last week and he wanted to go over a certain you made me a co-host again. He wanted to go over a certain topic, and the topic he wanted to go over was compressed natural gas, right? Specifically compressed natural gas vehicles.
Yeah, I think that was the
he had some great stuff. So, I mean, I went through and I did some basic research on this stuff, and because I read through his outline, but I don't want to go through his stuff. But there was some really interesting stuff I found out about it. Do you guys mind if I go through it real quick? I mean, just like basic chemical physical properties while we're waiting for him to get on.
Yeah,
sure.
Well,
all right. I have that for the most part. The LEL is 4 to 17%, okay, which is different, but kind of close to what propane is, right? So natural gas is basically a mixture of multiple types of gases, mainly methane, right, with some benzenes and
a couple of the lighter stuff added in,
right? So that's but there's been a 75% growth in vehicles worldwide. Going from 9.7 vehicles in 2008 to 17 million vehicles in 2015.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Wow.
And surprisingly enough, I haven't seen very many of these things going on fire, but I know Bob's got that whole one from New Jersey where the garbage truck. That was pretty much what he was going to talk about tonight, right?
Yeah, the garbage truck.
Yeah, and he had really good notes on it.
Yeah, great stuff.
I think everybody can agree that the old garbage truck fire was find a good safe place, have them pull over, dump out the load, put the fire out, bring another garbage truck to pick it up. But we had the one in New Jersey recently, which and completely exploded, and kind of made everybody rethink the approach to a garbage truck fire, especially if CNG is involved. There he is again.
Looks like he's coming in.
Yes. What's been happening?
Oh, come on.
Looks like I'm in an 80s music. Yes. Bob said the same thing earlier.
Oh, Skid Row, look at you.
Who's more 80s, the mullet?
Yeah, come on, man. Come on. Oh, my goodness. Look. Oh, it's all hooked. It's tangled. We got to get Bob in here. Where the hell is he? Oh, what the hell? I'm all banged up here. Now
Let's go.
There we go. Anywho,
so Phil, what was the video that you're referring to? What made that so much different than your typical garbage truck fire? What was it that was so dangerous? What did you see? Can you kind of briefly run through what your thoughts were on it?
Absolutely, and I think it had tons of hits on Hazmat Nation, and of course it went around all the other sites. It wasn't the only one ever. But if you're watching it and it's a garbage truck driving through the snow, Bob says he's going to explode. But there is a small fire, turns into a bigger fire, and then the whole thing just explodes. Obviously, we don't have the complete after-action report, but you can only assume that there may have been a line severed. And we'll let Bob get into it. I'm glad he's here. Let's give him some claps.
There you go.
Hey, Bob, how's it going? All right, you want to give yourself a quick hello to the group for those of you that are here for the first time. This is Bob Kosh.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Coshignano. I'm a Hazmat Lieutenant for Orlando Fire Department. Also a training and sales director for a company called Hazmat. So finally here. Thank you very much. And I love the do, bro. That's awesome.
Dude, I just let it go now.
He can grow a mustache in about 15 minutes. It's absolutely crazy.
Blows it right out.
Awesome.
So,
go ahead. Sorry.
As you were trying to clip in continuously, we had gotten started on some CNG stuff. We were talking about the video of the garbage truck that was going around, and we were looking to get some deeper information on it. Keeping in mind that anyone listening to the show may not be able to find the video or have the video. Give us a quick rundown of what was in the video, what you saw, and then we'll kind of go into why this is so much different than a regular fire.
Yeah, if you guys hadn't seen it, you could certainly YouTube it. It was a garbage truck fire in New Jersey, I believe. When they were watching, it caught fire, it seemed like only a few minutes. That once the fire started going, it started involving the tanks, the CNG tanks, and there was a massive explosion. Doing some research behind it, this isn't the first one that this has happened. There's been a lot of them across the country. With everybody trying to go to the new clean fuels and whatnot, that's a great thing for the environment, but unfortunately there's a lot of hazards that are involved with it. So with this particular incident, they had an explosion, but in Indianapolis, they had an issue where a first due engine company was dispatched to a garbage truck fire like a lot of people have. You would typically think, okay, the driver's going to dump the load. The first due engine will show up, put the fire out, game over, everybody go back to the firehouse. For whatever reason, the garbage truck driver didn't dump the load in Indianapolis, and this was actually a case study. And what the first due officer decided to do, because the garbage truck was open on top, he decided to call for an aerial apparatus. Their thought was to flow water on top, kind of surround it from a little bit of a distance. While they were waiting to do that, they had a catastrophic failure of one of the tanks. With that, a piece of debris went flying and actually hit one of the firemen in the head. Thank God he had his helmet on.
Wow.
It was pretty nasty. They did everything they were supposed to do. They've done everything like they practiced for, all types of these types of fires. And it just so happened that because of the incident and people not really understanding or knowing that this had a CNG tank involved, it could have been a lot worse. As a result, of Indianapolis's incident and the study that they did, they had they put out some information which we can get to in a little bit later. A neighboring fire department had the same situation. That driver dumped the load, pulled away. They were able to put the fire out because it was separated from the truck, so it wasn't involving the tanks, and it was basically a routine operation.
Wow.
So was there a there is a distinguishing difference between CNG and LNG, yes?
Yes.
Do we know for sure that this was a CNG tank and not an LNG tank?
I think it was a CNG tank.
Okay.
That's
All
what
right.
I'm thinking as well, is that was a CNG.
CNG. Okay. Because if it was an LNG tank, and there are a lot of LNG vehicles floating around as well,
Sure.
you know, heavy concern with the BLEVE and the expansion ratio and all that. But this was strictly a CNG.
Right.
Right. And they've had other incidents around the country where they've had just an explosion of the tank. There was one video I saw where it was actually like a blowtorch. The line had ruptured, and it shot it out like a flamethrower and caught the whole front of this house on fire.
You know, I some guys on a I use GroupMe. I don't know if anybody else uses it. It's probably not but there's an app called GroupMe that I use, and it's like a buff group, and like it's basically just a bunch of guys talking about it. But they were talking about that exact video, and they were saying, "Oh, well, somebody must have disposed of a propane barbecue tank in the back of it." And I looked at it and I said, "That's not how it would react." You know, it almost looked different than it would if it was crushed. If there was a propane tank crushed, there would be a large explosion. If it was involved in a fire, it would have reacted a little differently. So if you look at that very carefully, I think the video that you're talking about, it looks like it's almost dripping fire at the bottom, because I'm looking at it, passenger side rear. Is that the video you're talking about?
This passenger side rear. Yep, just a little bit below. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's the same video, and it didn't look right. I was like, maybe there's a flammable liquid in there, but it didn't look like it was like a propane tank would come off, because that would vaporize almost immediately. Right?
Yeah.
So
and when that BLEVE'd, you'd have a high expand. You know, you'd have that pressure wave come blowing out of the
and you'd see it. I mean, like, and because those compactors, they're pushing in at 30, 50 tons, compressing everything. If anything's going to go, it's going to be in 30, 50 tons. So, I mean, like, it was a little bit different. When what Bob is talking about here is a CNG cylinder, which is basically a gas-proof sleeve that's wrapped with like fiberglass to basically keep all the pressure inside there. Right, Bob?
Yeah, it's very similar to your SCBA tanks, the way it has that fiber wrapping around it. That keeps it compressed and keeps everything it's supposed to be in one solid position, if you will. But it's something else too. There's these things are in vehicles, passenger cars. They're in buses. They're in tractor trailers. We've got a lot of major industry areas around here where we have them in regular tractor trailer vehicles, and we've had a few jackknives. We deal with jackknives or that are involved in auto accidents on the highway. We're typically dealing with diesel tanks where we have to pump off the diesel or whatever. Well, now we're having to deal with the CNG, where we've had a couple of lines rupture in these jackknives, and the guys have had to go up and actually, pinch off the line or crimp it or whatever they need to do to stop the leak, from CNG versus, before we're just dealing with diesel. So now it's a whole different aspect when it's just a simple NVA.
So Bob,
what kind of
before even the explosion, I can think it would make it very obvious, but let's say you roll up on something like that, the garbage truck, for example, that's smoking. What are you looking for to tell you that it's a CNG versus just a regular old diesel garbage truck?
They're supposed to put, and in everything I've seen, either on passenger cars, you see it on the trunk of the car, on vans, you see it on the side. In these tractor trailers, they're actually labeled on the tank itself or the plastic covering. Just picture the diesel saddle tank. Basically, you take that tank out, and now you're replacing it with the CNG tank, and there's a CNG label somewhere in that direct area.
Something. I looked this up last night directly from the DOT's Hazmat website. It says CNG vehicles do not display the DOT Hazmat warning label, but DOT labels and sometimes placards are required for only natural gas carried on the vehicle as cargo and not the quantities carried as part of the fuel system. So it's a nicety that the guy puts it on his car because it's fueled by it. But if you're carrying it as part of your cargo, you are required to do that. So you don't need it, to be honest, in the United States. But I've never seen a car that didn't have it.
Well, and it's just like, the roach coaches that, we see going all over the place. That's what we call them. That are the construction sites or whatever. We've had a couple of those involved in auto accidents. There's nothing that indicates they have propane on board or natural gas until we actually had one flip over. And hey, lo and behold, there's a tank underneath that was leaking, and we had to take care of it.
Bang them up.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask. So, what from a distance? How would I be able to tell a saddle tank from a CNG tank? I mean, is there a difference between the two? Unless
there's that blue label that says CNG on it somewhere, probably close to the tank where you would normally envision the diesel saddle tanks. No, that's not going to happen.
Okay, and
just really trying to be aware of your surroundings and your slow approach to the scene, like you should typically do anyway.
What kind of pressures are we dealing with in these tanks? Are these 100 psi, 200 psi,
3,500 psi in some
because cases.
I
mean, propane gas is I'm trying to remember, 80 degrees outside is 179 pounds. It's not the noise in your head. It's Phil's battery back going into the dirt.
Is that? I'll mute that then.
No, it's okay.
That's me.
It's very you amplify. It's California.
I just wanted to make sure that wasn't me.
It's a ticking time bomb.
What the hell is that noise? But another thing is that you're going to see a lot more pronounced ends with the compressed natural gas because of that 3,500 pounds. You're going to see those rounded ends like it was a like a bullet cylinder, the high pressure cylinders. Right. So like the propane, you got those heavy shoulders on it, aka lower pressures. Whereas these type cylinders, where our SCBA cylinders have a totally round top, aka higher pressures. So that's going to be able to give you that thing. Those things look like big, fat 60-minute cylinders,
right?
Of stuff, and they're pressurized to 3,500 pounds. We're using, depending on your manufacturer, 4,500 pounds. That's a lot of gas inside that and a lot of pressure. So that's something we got to consider. And another thing is, just remember, you guys that are coming in here, 132 pounds at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Thank you very much. You are a quintessential science guy, resource man. I'm going to give you the star of the day. But remember that this stuff is usually, every time I see this stuff on any vehicle anywhere in the public, it's usually on the top of the rig. And that's why it was a little weird on this this garbage truck, because it wasn't like all the MTA buses and the whatever the hell buses you got, they're always on the top. And the reason for that is because once they release, they let go and they're naturally lighter than air.
See, now all the garbage trucks out where I live, not where I work, but where I live, they all have the CNG cylinders right where the saddle tank.
Yeah, but why does that make sense? Because now they're at your knees, and now to get to where they want to go up. So they get all those ignition points. That doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm not a manufacturer, but I think it's very smart to have them up on top, on a train, on a crane, whatever the hell it is. I want it on top.
And then we've seen CNG cylinders in trunks,
right inside the trunks and regular.
Inside the trunk. So explain
right.
that one.
And that's in a confined space now.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point, Mike, because in Seattle they did a after action report where they had a passenger car that caught fire and exploded. And you could probably download it off the internet somewhere. They did a very thorough after action report where it shows this tank, how far it actually got propelled from the vehicle, the damage, the bumper that got shot out like shrapnel, and the guys were very lucky indeed.
Any idea on the pressure relief devices that are on these tanks?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
The only information I had on those was that most of these, there's 4 different types of tanks, and depending on the size, it goes from a Type 1 to a Type 4. Going from Type 1 to Type 4, they get wrapped even more and more with the same type of wrap that we see on our SCBAs. And as that progresses from type 1 to type 4, it's a lighter and lighter material. Now, does that make it weaker? I really don't know. One of the things that I was reading up in some of the research was saying that when they're exposed to sand and gravel debris, chemical exposure from batteries. So if it's located by a bank of batteries, let's say, the corrosiveness of that could deteriorate some of the cylinders, and just regular road tear. But mostly they're supposed to be impervious to the puncture of road debris and stuff like that. So it's the interaction of the sand, the gravel, or chemicals that weaken these types of tanks.
I'm going to read right out of DOT manual. It says some of the safety features included in the CNG vehicle fuel systems are cylinder overpressurization discs, individual cylinder shutoff valves, and an emergency quarter-turn fuel line shutoff, clearly labeled and usually labeled near the driver's rocker panel to stop the flow of gas towards the engine compartment. So what I read that is if I'm sure it's not going to be out to the public, because if I was a jerk walking through the parking lot, I'd be like, shove this old lady's car. But I'm sure if you pop the trunk, whatever method you might have, you're going to find a clearly labeled valve that's going to be a quarter turn. You shut this thing off. But also, in addition to this, it's going to have blow-off discs. At what pressure, I have no idea. I mean, because if this thing is running between 3 and 3,600 pounds, I'm sure the pressure disc, you can make up any 10%, 20%, 30%. This could be up to 5,000 pounds this thing blows off at. I mean, would anybody disagree?
Right. So then it's just a matter of what happens first. Does the tank start to fail as the pressure is building before you reach that pressure relief device, or is the pressure going to build up faster than the tank can fail?
Just to go through it, I mean, because I want to keep it simple for the newer people here. Is that we had in this situation a BLEVE. And what this really means to me is that whatever pressure relief device was overwhelmed. All right, we can have a BLEVE of just water. We don't need flammables, or we don't need corrosives or toxic, whatever the hell you have. We can just have a BLEVE of just steam in a vessel. We put enough pressure on that thing, that steam will get to the point where it will blow up the vessel. So if we have a vessel that is enclosed, or in this case, where we overwhelm that pressure release device, then the pressure will build to the point where it overwhelms those seams, the connections, the fasteners, whatever it might be, and explodes. That's why we had this problem.
We had different gas, but it was still oxygen in an ambulance. Caught fire, happened to be caught on tape, and it was on the YouTube the next day. But the cylinder ended up giving. Literally, I mean, it butterflied the cylinder, and it was a relatively large. I don't want to say explosion, but it was kind of an explosion.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah, and something too, real quickly. When we're looking at these types of things, you may not always know it, like we mentioned earlier. In Florida, and maybe it's not everywhere, but in Florida, every time I've seen one of these vehicles, there has been it's a blue square with white lettering saying CNG on it. So,
but a lot of times, don't forget, right now it's kind of a fad technology. So everybody's advertising that they're using clean energy. Everybody's advertising that they're using CNG. If there's no standard to keep that up, then when that sticker gets peeled off or fades away, it won't be replaced. As this starts to become less of a fad and more of a everybody's doing it, if there's no regulations to it, you're going to see nothing.
Right, absolutely.
What you'll see, am I muted?
No,
am I good?
No, you're good.
What you'll see in California, especially with the CNG vehicles, say the automobiles, you'll see the carpool sticker because you get access into the carpool lane by having that. And with it, just like Bob described, the CNG logo, which is that blue and white. And we've looked at those because typically the Honda Civic has one that's the CNG and it's in the trunk. And when you're talking about the buses with the cylinders being on top, when we did some pre-planning of our buses, part of it was the buses were built that way. And really, I think it was more design. I don't I can't say for sure, but I'm not sure the engineers actually thought about the vapor pressure of the gas so much as the design of the bus. They just fit on top, and on a garbage truck, it was a retrofit where the saddle tanks were, and you can't really put the tanks on top of the the moving garbage thing. But there seems to be, at least on our buses, at least in California, a generally typical location for the shutoff valve. Although watching that video out of New Jersey, I'm glad nobody was going up and messing with any shutoff valve when that went down. That thing was a catastrophic breach.
Well, I'm a big chemical and physical properties guy. Like when I come out of the rig, I every time Bob sends out Phil sends out one of these stories, I'm like, all right, how would I handle this? What am I going to do? What meters am I grabbing? So I'm thinking right off the bat that I know CNG is a non-toxic, but it's lighter than air. Well, yeah, it's lighter than air, and it's going to displace the oxygen, right? So it's as simple as fixing it. Bob, what else? What do you? I know you got this all written out. So, if I'm coming up there, you're in the front seat of the rig, and you're yelling back to the guys. You're hitting the microphone against the wall. We're going to work, guys. Whatever you guys do, I don't know. But you tell us.
Oh God, why isn't this A shift?
Yeah, well, let's just make it right. There's a special. But what are you calling back? I mean, seriously, as a boss. Me and Mike are in the back. You are in the front. We're going to one of these things. We're thinking of things. You're telling us are you telling us to look in the books? Are we supposed to, as you two guys, as bosses, do you expect you guys to know that, let's say, the top 10 common responses, the ammonia, the propane, the natural gas, these things that we go to constantly, do you guys as bosses expect your men or women behind you to know these things implicitly, or do you expect them to have that top 10 cheat sheet where they refer back to? What do you guys do? Do you have them come in and do things?
Well, I personally expect them to have, that there's a top 10 chemicals involved in hazardous material incidents. Just basic stuff. And it was something Chris Hawley put out years ago at one of his conferences. And I thought, you know what, that's some good stuff. And I wrote it down and kept it. And you need to look at the incidents that you're involved with in your first due area. And if it's ammonia, chlorine, propane, natural gas, whatever, my personal opinion is you should know that. My guys know the basic properties of natural gas, propane, because we have a lot of that in our area. They also know the basic properties of ammonia and chlorine because we have some of that in our area. Now, if I was to come up on something like this, the very first thing I'm going to do is slow down. If I'm told that it's a garbage truck or a tractor trailer that's on fire, we're going to slow our approach a little bit. As firemen, it's in our DNA to want to go in and jump in and do something really fast. But we also need to step back a little bit and take a few extra seconds, slow down, size it up. What do I got? What am I doing? What do I need? That's my size up that was taught to me from a very young fireman by a seasoned chief, and I've never, ever forgotten those 3 terms.
And one of those things is to come up on a corner, to prevent those blevy things, because I think the guy that got hit in the head was coming up off of this side, the 90-degree side, and he got plugged in the head. I'm not saying this 45-degree would have saved him or prevented this, but I'm saying that, that's general SOP. We don't come up along the bumpers. We don't come up where the magnesium is going to blow up. We come up where it's smart in the 45-degree panel. We come up with our hoses, firing already, and have that water blanket in front of us, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And the very first thing is to position your apparatus in the safe position. Make sure you're safe enough. You can stretch as much hose as you got on the truck. You don't need to be right on top of something. That's something a lot of guys forget. You got 500,000 feet of hose. You can do a lot of work. Inch and 3/4, whatever. You might have 300 or 400 feet. Use a distance. It's just like you're going to a natural gas leak. You're not going to park right on top of it.
Right. A 2.5-inch hose will throw 60 to 70 feet.
Right. Exactly. So I would expect my guys to jump off the rig with the hose laid that I'm going to tell them to pull. We're going to try and approach it, like you said, from the right angle. And if I can, the very first thing I'm going to do is have the driver dump the load, pull away from it. So now I've separated the potential disaster from what's really burning, if it's not the tank and the hoses itself.
And any thoughts on stretching multiple lines, one for the fire and one for cooling the tanks?
I wouldn't have a problem with that as long as you had a water supply, because as at least for us, you pull one attack line, you don't pull a second one until you have a supply line. You can pull it, but you're not charging it.
So which as a boss, which would you give higher priority, the tanks or the fire?
It would depend if I can get to the fire quick enough and knock it out, because then I've taken away the problem of the tank. If I can put the fire out like that, there's no problem with the tank. If the whole thing's involved, I would probably start cooling the tanks and separate the fire from the tank, and then let another unit come in and handle the fire itself.
Am I muted again?
Nah, you're good. I don't think that's you.
How about now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. I thought I'd add to that, because I think as a first-in-company commander, it's a big difference whether I'm rolling in the hazmat squad or on the engine company. And I'm sure it's a saying across the the U.S. In the morning, we're looking at our operational. Who am I with today? Am I going to the roof? Am I going? It all depends on your crew. So everything you describe, it all depends on the experience of your crew. And doesn't mean that the inexperience is going to be necessarily a hazard, but what it tells me, I've had an aggressive crew on an engine company. I've got about 30 seconds to make a decision, and then they're going to take off running. They're going to be grabbing that hose line. They're going to take off, and I have that small window of opportunity to relay to them what's going to go down. So big difference between arriving as a hazmat squad and then just an engine company. And to add what Bob said, usually when we have things, often it's not a CNG for us. It's been tanker trucks on the freeways. Water supply is an issue. So rolling in, of course, always considering life safety, rescue, etc. That changes everything. Next going to be water considerations. It's very tough to lay a supply on a major LA freeway, so we may call for a water tender. And then once on scene, like I said, it depends on my crew. And as a company commander, anybody that's been doing it or has been able to sit in the seat, you have that small window of opportunity to kind of state what you're going to do. Because if you have very aggressive guys, they're going to take off. Their headsets are going to be off before you finish saying what you're saying, if you're going to change up your ops. So I'm a big fan of having that game plan ahead of time. And then, like Bob said, whether it be to take out the fire first, I've had the unfortunate happenstance. I have it where there is a driver and you're worried about a rescue, and your hose line is more to establish a safe area to get that person out versus just knock down a fire. And then, hey, if life safety is taken out of the loop, then you've got, for us, if it's summertime or any day it's not raining, which is 360 days of the year, then I'm worried about fire impinging onto the urban interface and having a brush fire. So there's a whole lot that can happen just from one vehicle fire. But if anything, as a company commander, that video out of New Jersey really showed me I'm going to take a step back the next garbage truck fire I see and really be sure. Yeah. A bus, what am I thinking? A bus? I'm always thinking there's people on board. The commercial vehicle, usually the driver is a trained driver. They know what they're doing. And they're probably already out of that vehicle with a plan, unless there was some sort of entrapment.
Probably he's not a.
That was my 2 cents.
He's probably not a boob, right?
Probably. But most likely, yeah. We're on, a bus. Heck, it's all types of buses out there. And there could be a bus with, whole lot of school children or the kids in wheelchairs and all those other things that the whole focus of the incident changes dramatically.
I'm going to break it down to the fireman level, the technician, specialist, whatever you want to call it. And I'm hoping Bob, Mike will back me up on this thing, is that if I'm coming in,
no, you're wrong.
I know you always do. You're out there hanging. If I'm coming into this thing, what meters am I pulling? What specific meters am I pulling? Of course, I'm going to pull my 4-gas. I'm going to pull, which is the typical standard oxygen, carbon monoxide, LEL, and hydrogen sulfide. That's the standard 4-gas. Now I want to pull probably my PID. That's my primary. And I probably want to put the FID, if I had that operation available. I want to put that as a secondary. I'm going to keep it on the rig, but I'm going to have it ready and available. It takes a while to warm up. I want that thing up and running. I also would want, let's see. What would I want? I'd like some pH paper. Why? Because I don't know. It's a garbage truck. And it's got everything. Dude, if that thing burps and shoots some type of acid or base, I want to know about it. So I'm going to put some chem tape across my arm over here on the striping because it's easy to take off. And I put about 6 or 7 different strips of pH paper across there, so I look like an Aborigine dancing
Peacock.
peacock, like a peacock to say. And I'm going downrange, and I have my meters in hand. I know my meters. I know how long it takes for that meter to get from the tip all the way to my meter. And so on these runs, we don't need long tubes. The hoses, we can get away with like 4-foot, 6-foot hoses. We have 4-foot, 10-foot, 25, 50, 100 footers. Do you really need to put the 25 footer on for this thing? Break it down to where you can. Remember, we're talking about a second per foot. Do you really want to be waiting that long? The F paper. And remember, we have an upcoming episode coming about this, but the F paper is neutralized by high acids. So if you have F paper, I'm just going to throw this F paper because those guys in that class that the guy yells all the time in the video. You know the one I'm talking about, right? The guy yells at you. It's like, am I doing it wrong? Whatever. Anyway, he's always talking about throw the fluorine paper, throw the F paper in that thing, and you get your reading. If you throw F paper into a high acidic or even high base, you got to read those instructions on F paper. 99% of the time, it kills that stuff. It just defeats it. What is it? The Spill Fighters, whatever brand you use, that's a multi-strip. That stuff may be defeated by what's in a garbage hopper. So this type of scenario, this specific scenario, I'm thinking 4-gas, PID, maybe FID, pH paper when applicable. And I'm literally doing this off the top of my head because I did not want to prepare for this, because what if I was really going to this? Mike, what would you now me and Mike were going in there. We're selecting it. Mike's my backup. What are you picking on addition to what I just said?
All right. Well, we're assuming the garbage truck is on fire, right? And we're going in to take a look, or are we just dealing with a leak?
I'll be honest with you, we hope so.
You hope so, yeah. Not? Well, with it rising, it's really, it's not like a propane tank. So even if I have a leak, there's really no rush to get that thing shut off. It's just going up into the atmosphere.
Potential for Blevy. That's it.
If it's on fire.
If it's not, just let it roll.
If it's on fire, right. Yeah, if it's not, just let it roll. So I would, you're in and I'm the backup. I would have my secondary meters. I would have my FID in case you needed that. And I would be rolling with my 5-star, my primary sets of meters, possibly, go in with one of the WMD meters, not because I'm really worried that somebody's got a weapon of mass destruction, but the cross sensitivity on a lot of these things will give us if there is some kind of, some kind of nitrate burning, if there's some kind of fertilizer burning, if I've got phosphorus in the air, all those things that we really don't want to be breathing in. There's a garbage truck. We have no idea what's in it. So I would want to make sure I've got all my bases covered.
Two more things I just thought of it while you were saying that is a meter to find a leak, like a tiff, like a, but that's if you have a small, obviously if the thing's blowing out a 12-foot tail of fire, I got it. I think I could pull this one off. Yeah.
Kind of know where it is.
Listen, the experts are here, guys. I think I got this one. But if you can't, maybe you bring up that tiff for that point specific or the soapy water to kind of give a little, if that's a term. Is that a term?
That's a term.
Yeah,
that's a term.
It's a term.
All right. So I got 2 questions. One question is going to be on arrival.
Okay.
All right. So, we've got we essentially have a cylinder that could, disintegrate. What are we looking at for evacuation distances, our initial standoff distances? What are we going to be thinking about?
Well, and that's a good point. Let's talk about the first new unit arriving. The first thing should be probably secure an area at least 500 yards all the way around it. That's a good start anyway. Anything you look up in the ERG starts off with 330. I don't know who or why they picked up that number, but that's the number they came. Even chlorine is 330. I guess somebody likes threes. But you want to do 500 yards at least in all directions. And then you got to really size up what it is that's around you. Maybe you're in an open area, there isn't anything around you. And that brings kind of getting off topic for a second, but Bill mentioned water supply. There's a lot of cities now that are going to these dry hydrants, if you will, or connection points along major interstates. Do you know where they are? Are they labeled? In some areas, they're not allowed to paint them red or put FDC for the fire department connection. Those are things you should you should kind of look at. But at least, you come up on scene 500 yards around, spot it in the right position. You can always stretch hose. And if you need to evacuate, I would say evacuate at least as far away.
And am I again? I'm about to lose my battery.
Okay, Phil.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something before you punch out?
Yeah, and to Bob's point, the ERG is awesome. Looks like my Phantom of the Opera now. If you're always looking at where's it going, what's the potential? Meaning, the garbage truck on fire, even a FedEx truck on fire is bad. But what's it going to do next? And I mentioned like our urban interface, and often our big brush fires are started by a vehicle fire that has trouble going up a grade and overheats, pulls over, catches on fire. And then, so I actually am usually looking downrange, not just for people, but houses on hillsides and all that, the rest of it that can be set off by that same incident. So when you look at evacuation distances, ERG is great and know your numbers, but most of us work in areas where you can have 1 million people within 330 feet. So then you have to get real creative on either moving your problem or getting rid of the problem. But if I black out here, I'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Yeah, you got to, you're from California. You got to figure out a better way to lower your carbon footprint. This isn't working. This is not.
The sad part is I have solar, but it goes out too when the power goes out.
He's a very fancy man. I
want to real quick on at Hazmat Squad 26. Yeah. I'm assuming that's what that means. He says, what about the ERG Blevy tables? I would agree with you that the Blevy tables are something to go to. We throw around the word Blevy, but we're all aware, and for anyone who's not aware, this wouldn't actually be a Blevy. This would be a disintegration of a compressed gas tank. But your Blevy explosion is going to be tremendously more powerful than anything a cylinder could produce of the similar size. So if you did go to your Blevy tables, you would not be incorrect. You would be giving yourself the maximum possible distances. So that's not a bad idea, but don't confuse the idea. We'll throw around similar terms. This is not a Blevy, but just know for safety purposes, you could definitely use that Blevy table.
Just a couple of things. Now I'm second guessing myself. So me and Mike have left the rig with our meters that we spoke about before, and now our resource or science guy or whoever the hell it might be is looking in the book. And I literally just looked in the book. It's page 187 of the NIOSH guide, and it says LPG. There he goes. Good luck, sir. Keep pressing on. The IP is 10.95 electron volts. The 10.95 electron volts. So is our PID going to pick this thing up? Maybe. Because remember, between 10 and 11.2-ish, you might pick it up. It's not guaranteed because it gets to that gray area around that where that electron volt can do it. So can it do it? Don't know. So your PID in this situation, we're going up there expecting to see something because it's a flammable gas. It's got the CH. We're expecting to see something. You're not seeing shit. That's the way it's going to be.
Right. Your idea of bringing up the PID wasn't as your primary. It wasn't for the natural gas. It was for anything else that might be in that vehicle.
But it's a great shot from the hip. And you know what? You're not wrong for saying it. And you know what? The funny thing is that me, Bob, Phil, Mike, we talk about these episodes every week. We say, what are we going to talk about this week? Okay, it's compressed natural gas. And me and Mike, we really do not look at anything in NIOSH or anything because we want to be sitting flat on our heels. So when you guys say, what meters you bringing, I'm literally bringing it off the top of my head because then I'm going to look at my book and see, oh, well, you know what? This was wrong or this was right. You should have brought this. You should. That's what you guys are going to be seeing out there in the real world. I mean, that's what I'm going to be seeing. And U.S. Coast Guard Go Disp, whatever the hell your name is, of course you go into the CRIS manual. You wrote it.
It is your
The
manual.
Coast Guard runs that thing. Of course you're gonna go there. That's your wheelhouse, But
It's a great manual though. Not to. The only thing I don't like about it is that it's not readily available in electronic form. You have to like beg, borrow, steal, and swipe it from somebody. But it is a great manual. Only manual that has odor thresholds, by the way.
Yeah, if you can get your hands on a Chris manual, all 3 4-inch binders of them, they are fantastic. I got to give it to them. They wrote. That is probably my first move. If I'm in the library and I'm there to pull out whatever I want, I can go to the internet. I can go to we have so many freaking books. And one of the first things I go to is the Chris manual. The ERG is a beautiful thing. It's a great thing for first responders. And honestly, I still use it as a specialist. But it doesn't give you the meat and potatoes. Wiser is great. Even on the internet, I love when guys go to the internet. Oh, I'm going to find out the information on the internet. The problem is that the internet's written by idiots. And it's not absolutely true. Wiki is... Did you hear about that thing?
I love Wiki. What do you mean no Wiki?
That's a great movie.
There was
Great
a
movie.
guy that wrote himself. He went to like a Britney Spears. I don't know who's even cool yet, but he wrote himself as he was Britney Spears' brother-in-law, and he put it in the wiki. And when the bouncer says, who are you?" And he goes, "I'm Britney Spears' brother-in-law." The guy let him in. He wrote the whole wiki.
Jeez.
That's insane. What about your chemicals? Who's saying there's no jerks out there like me that's going to go in there and just change the chemical properties of something that's not right?
Right, 100%, 100%. So when I am looking things up on the internet, Bob's, I don't know what you guys prefer to do, but I will type in that chemical and then I type in SDS or MSDS. Because generally that will bring me right to the manufacturer's MSDS sheets. And although not all MSDS or SDS sheets are the same, the information is going to be similar enough to get me by.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, when we're teaching our tech class, everybody wants to get out their phones and type in everything. And then I said, you know what? The cell service just went down.
that's great.
What are you
love
gonna
that
do?
because we do it all the time. We're like, oh, well, you're going to do this pump. Oh, I'm sorry, that just shit the bed. What are you going to do?
Right. Yeah,
What do you
Exactly.
do something else.
And now they got to think because now what's the second best thing? What's going to give us the information we need? What's going to, without embarrassing ourselves. I mean, sometimes that's a consideration. What can we do without embarrassing ourselves? And it's an important part. But let me just go.
I don't think I can do anything without
Again,
embarrassing
I'm almost embarrassed. Look at me.
myself.
Would you look-
I love it.
Would you look at this whole thing? This is the Vogue.
There's no embarrassment there. There's nothing. It's actually
I am
envy.
shameless. So natural gas is lighted in the air. The flammable range is between 5 and 15,000 parts. 5 and 15%, which is really close to propane. Okay, nice narrow range. Therefore, it is not extremely flammable in my book, which is about 150,000 parts per million. The IP is about 12.6, and I say about 10.56 or something like that, depending on the mixture. And the reason is because this gas is totally arbitrary. It's mostly methane, but it can be mixed up of different concentrations of butane and you know what? Hold on a second. I can find where it is. I had a whole list of them, but there's butane and propane and a million things.
Yeah, it's going to differ depending on the well, where it came from, how it was taken out. I mean, it is literally a mixture that changes continuously.
And here's the most dangerous thing for us as responders is that it may or may not be mixed with mercaptan. Now, mercaptan is the smelling agent that over 40% of the population has to be attuned to be able to pick it up. So if you're one of those unlucky 40%, then you do not pick that up. But over 40% have to be able to pick that up. Now, there's stuff that are in these tanks, these commercial tanks, because they're town, state, county, government, whatever the hell they are, they're getting government propane, and that may not be odorized. Right, Bob?
Yep, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to mention that. They don't have to. And again, like you said, it depends where you're at, whether it's odorized or non-odorized.
Right. So don't confuse this stuff with propane, which is heavier than air. Okay, propane goes into the the deep spots. The flammable range is from 2 to 9 or 20,000 to 90,000 parts per million. Totally different area. The IP is 11.07 on propane. There's very, 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 very few chance that you're actually going to get that on the PID. But the natural gas, I'm going to say it's more of a probability rather than a possibility. You guys,
Yeah, a little bit.
Right? It's closer. I'm not going to say it's in the range. I'm not going to say, oh, it's under 10.6. You got. Don't think of this as digital. PIDs don't work digital. They work as, I had a good day. I knocked it out of the park. Right? It's like, you gave it a good swack. So,
right.
With that, and the ideal H's, these things are insane. Me and Mike were just talking about this in the last episode where you brought up your CO run. Mike, just do me a favor, just reiterate that.
Sure. So for those of you that aren't going to hear the show, I have a background in the science and stuff like that. So when I was a probie on the job, I had a pretty in-depth understanding of all this stuff. And I had a boss that I don't know why, but he had this big thing about turning on your flashlights before you went into CO emergency, because his big thing was, hey guys, CO is flammable and you can't have a source of ignition. It was almost like he was trying to be like, a smart guy, like, hey, hey, Proby, don't worry, you listen to me, I know everything. And I kept saying, well, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. You want me to turn my flashlight on outside, but then we walk in with no mask on. I said, the flammable range for CO is like 12, you need like 1,200 parts per million just to hit the lower explosive limit.
Fredo in The Godfather.
Yeah, you're going to be dead before you explode. I'm like, you're going to preach to me about the flashlight, and you're going to ignore me when it comes to putting on the face piece.
Oh, how...
And that's the difference between a toxic flammable or a flammable toxic.
Right.
I know this is not the part of this show, but I was just watching, for any of you that are listening to us, because I'm probably going to cut this part out. In fact, I'm pushing the button. I'm cutting this part out. For you that are listening to us, there's a great thing called the Air Gas Ace course. It is put on by Praxair. I'm cutting this part out. So only the people that are live with us right now are going to be listening to this part. I'm cutting out the video and the audio. So those of you that are listening, listen up close. There's an Air Gas Ace course that's in Praxair. And if you don't get it, send me an email at bob@thehazmatguys.com. I just started taking this. This is like an expert level class on all types of cylinders and whatnot. And they give you a certificate at the end. This would cover the compressed natural gas all the way through all the different valve bodies, pressures. It is quite honestly one of the best classes, free best classes I've ever taken. I highly recommend this. Have you guys ever taken this?
No, I've never heard of it.
Unbelievable. A guy in the firehouse told me about this. I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. I'm making sure that it is exactly that. It's called the Air Gas Ace, and it's by Praxair, I believe. Praxair is the but I highly recommend you going to that and taking that class. I am honestly in about the sixth part of it. It's very difficult. I'll be honest with you. It's tough.
It's an online class.
It's an online class. You take it and you go. Okay. You come and go. Air Gas, thank you. Thank you so much. Hazmat Squad 266. 26. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right. Turn the recording back on.
The recording's back on. So, anyway, there's a lot of great things out there for you guys. But just a couple more things I had in my notes is that compressed natural gas vehicles, however, have an important safety feature. If the system leaks or an overpressurization disc operates, the system will empty quickly And unlike gasoline, escaping natural gas will likely safely
Dissipate.
up and away from the emergency scene. It will not puddle underneath, which is honestly, when I looked at those videos,
that's a great thing.
I saw puddling fire. So that tells me
Liquid.
probably not that. Now, I'm not saying it's not associated. They might have been carrying some Fugazi liquid flammable in addition to this, but I'm going to say that fire underneath it was not liquid natural gas. If it was, it would be roaring.
Right.
So,
and there could have been something else too, like you said. It could have been a rubber hose or rubber hoses that were melting and dripping and dropping down. Who knows? Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly.
Any number of things. The cylinders. We put out the fire. We've protected everything. Now we're at the end of this. The fire's out. We don't have a leak. We do have a leak. Whatever it is, at some point somebody's got to give the thumbs up to have this bad boy taken away. How are we looking at these cylinders? How are we going to turn around and inspect them? What are we doing to kind of feel comfortable that the IC can give up this pressurized tank to the next person?
From my standpoint as a lieutenant, and the officer on the scene is probably in charge of it, unless I got an incident commander, as long as I come up with my 4 or 5 gas meter, my PID, my FID, whatever it is I have, if we're going the hazmat route, as long as I don't have anything leaking anymore, we're turning it back over to property owner, and it's their problem. We're going to call in our area, we're going to call the Orange County, Florida EPD, let them know what's going on, just because of the release, the state warning point, and those kind of things. But really, the bigger problem from a contamination standpoint is probably all the stuff that was burning, that was in the back of the garbage truck in the first place. The natural gas is either burned up or gone, whatever. As long as the tank doesn't have anything else in it, we're good. We're going to now have to worry about the runoff and contaminants from the stuff that was in the truck.
And you guys in Florida burn bodies. I mean, so it's really not a big deal.
Allegedly.
Whatever. So yeah, absolutely. Mike, I'm just parlaying into the next question. I'm sure you're going to be asking me, is that what do we do? As far as us, we're going to be doing the same thing. It's going to be DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, DEC, Conservation, EPA, if so be it, Coast Guard, if it's on a waterway, and the like. So we got to notify some people, and depending on your locality, like in New York, it's basically 4 gallons. If it's over 4 gallons, then we have to notify people. If it's under 4 gallons, we do not have to notify people. We just kick some dirt on it and we'll look the other way. I hate to say it that way.
Flush it down the
drain. If it's 6 gallons, it looks like 4 gallons.
That's literally what it says. So it comes down to interpretation of what you think it is and not. And we've talked about this before. A lot of guys double up that spill where you think, oh, yeah, that's 25 gallons. You can almost rely. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to put money on this. You throw 5 gallons of water in front of Joe Blow, and he will almost guarantee double the amount. He will say 10. Do this in statistical and get the data. I'm going to tell you statistically, anytime you hear a quantity on the radio, and this is not a definite, anytime you hear a quantity on the radio, half it. That's what it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when we have a 200-gallon leaking oil tank, leaking diesel tank, and it's an 80-gallon tank. You're like, yeah,
I got a Honda that's leaking. It's got 50 gallons on the ground. No, you don't. No, you don't. I'm sorry. You're a dummy. You're a dummy.
Or you break out the 85 because the entry guy's like, hey, we've got 70 gallons, and you suck up barely 16.
Right.
All right, Mike. Oh,
right,
baby, I think we're done.
Anybody in the audience have anything that they would like to ask or add? If you do, now would be the time. I will give you a few seconds to type.
Just a real while we're waiting for them. Just a real after party. Yeah. after just a real quick couple of things. Remember your distance that you're going to stay away from it, at least 500 feet, 500 yards, rather. Get with the guy who's driving it. See if he'll separate the debris from the fire, and approach it from the right angle. After that, best of luck.
All right, very good. Hey, Bob, you've been at work. Any good Hazmat 1 runs? No.
Mike's been gone for a while, I think.
I have been gone for a while. I've been out of the loop for a couple of weeks, so won't get into that.
Leave me in the trench.
I am leaving you in the trench. I am. I'll be back soon. As long as as long as everything goes good. All right. Well, that was the only question that we have from the audience. The Bobs. Anybody have anything to add real quick?
You know what? I'm going to throw out there that you can reach us at the Hazmat Guys. Oh, yeah, actually, Bob and or Mike at thehazmatguys.com. We have a weekly show that we put out on Fridays. It's published on iTunes, Stitcher, and all of those types of podcasts where you can learn about all the ins and outs. It's audio-only type of podcast. You can listen to it while you're vacuuming or driving to work. I swear a lot of guys seem to be listening to it. Even the closet guys that aren't proud that they're hazmaticians, but we go over a lot of stuff. So I would highly encourage you to go over to those podcasts and listen to them. Please give us your feedback. Our podcast number is 843-628-1484, or just send us an email at Bob or Mike. It's two separate emails. Am I saying that right?
Right.
Two separate.
It's Bob at the Hazmat Guys
or
and Mike at the Hazmat Guys. Or right. or either way.
You can send it to idiot at the Hazmat Guys.
I think we've got a feedback at the Hazmat Guys and info at the Hazmat Guys.
Anything at the you can send garbage at the Hazmat Guys and we'll get back.
We've got them all. baby.
Bobby, what about you, baby?
Yeah, if you need to get a hold of us, hazmatnation.com, hazsim.com, or at Hazmat Nation, Hazmat Lieutenant, or Hazsim, our Twitter page. So check it out, and they all have a lot of good information. And we'll be back every Tuesday, 9:15.
Totally.
All right, well.
I'll have a different hairset every single time.
Well, guys, that pretty much wraps up another episode here at the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. Hey, please be sure to follow us on Facebook at hazmatnation.com and the hazmatguys.com. We already know how we can get a hold of everybody. How do we get a hold of Phil?
Well, good.
Yeah, you can get a hold of Phil at Hazmat Nation or hazmatnation.com.
Yeah, he's Phil at the hazmatnation.com. And don't forget, you can like us on YouTube. We have the Hazmat channel. It's THMG Nation at gmail.com. Come on, listen, subscribe to the channel. Anytime we upload one of these, which will probably be Mondays. I think it's Monday.
Monday's uploaded.
So we're releasing this one, and it'll be a grand event.
And we'll be doing this again next Tuesday, 21:15 hours Eastern Standard Time on the blab.im.
I will not be there.
You won't be there next week?
I am engaged in other prior commitments.
Oh.
I have a hairstylist coming into my house.
He's going to switch your hair up. All right. This will also be in audio format, podcast version. You can find it under iTunes at the Hazmat Nation Guys. And as Bob said, we're going to be posting the videos on YouTube at the THMGN Nation at Gmail.
Right.
So this is Michael Monaco, and I'm signing off.